Hi there. Thanks for coming along to the workshop today. What we're going to be focusing on today is looking at doing survey analysis in Quirkos. Now, this is going to be really useful if you've got a mixed method survey, which has a combination of questions with discrete answers, so yes or no categories, or age and gender and things like that, as well as those open-ended comments. And we're going to show you how you can import those very easily into Quirkos and then use Quirkos to explore those qualitative open-end questions. So what we're going to start with today is just look at the Eserve platform. Now, this is a free online survey system, which is sponsored by a group of different universities so that it will be freely available for everyone to use. It has lots of features that allow you to edit and play with your survey, and also gives you unlimited number of responses and ability to export the data when you've got your responses into a format that you can use in any other package. So it's a really good place to start. And we've actually written a blog post article which gives you a kind of overview of using this and setting up a brief survey. So you'll see here we've set up for this example one, which is just called test survey. And we're just asking simple questions here. What is your name? How old are you? What did you think of our service? And this is a kind of Likert scale. How can we improve our service, and any other comments? So we've got the two open-ended questions here. Now with Eserve, it's very easy to put in questions like this. So we can just click here to add a question between these other questions. So we might put in add a new question, and then it's going to pop up and ask us what kind of question we want here. So selected multiple choice by default, but let's select a single text box. So we've got an open-ended text entry here, and we can format the question here. So for this one, let's say something like what would make our service more attractive? And then all these options here basically allow you to change the formatting of the question if that's important to you. And then these options down the bottom here show you the options for the text. So you can restrict the type of text which people can put in there. So at the moment, anything can put in there, or you could restrict it to numbers or an email address, and it will validate that for you. And you can also change it to be a one-line response or a text box response, how wide and how high, and if a response is required for that particular question. And then a message if somebody doesn't put in that question. So when you've done that, you can just click Save and Close. And then you'll see here, we've got this new question in here, what will make our service more attractive? And we can even drag that around and change the order of the questionnaire. We're going to go over Eserve and setting up a survey in more detail next month. But for now, I'm just going to show you how to export that data and then put that into Quirkos and analyze it. So if you assume that you've now sent out the link to the survey, people have gone and filled it in, and then you want to analyze those responses. You can do that to a certain extent with the online platform, but it doesn't really give you any kind of qualitative analysis tools. So if you click on the print or export paper survey here, it gives you these options, item to export. So what is it that you want to see? There's a kind of results summary or the actual data of the survey itself. So you select the survey and then you select the file type here as PDF or doc. And what that does is that shows you all of the questions in there. So that's not quite what we want to do for here. That's if we want to kind of export the structure of the questionnaire. But if you click on the results here, this shows us here all the different results. So these are what people have put in, and the 3 different responses for each question. So this is the 3 responses for how can we improve our service. And here we can export with this save button here, export data to file. And when we click on that, it allows us to choose which responses we want to save, and also which questions. So here by default, we select all the questions and all the responses. You could also have them just from a particular time period. And that's useful if you just want to get the most recent responses that you've had or during a particular period of time. And then the export mode you want is compact with a single column for each question. And you've got also options here to put in numerical answers, which you probably want in here, but also to show the IP address of the respondent. That might be useful for you to see where people are responding from and if the same person is responding over and over again, for example. And then for the file format, you can have Excel or XML spreadsheet, but it's best to choose comma-separated values. That's the most common format. And then you just press the download button here, and that's the format that Quirkos will be able to import natively. And then that should open up in Excel. So we have a look at that now. Okay, and this is roughly what it would look like in Excel. So you've basically got the columns here for the different questions and information about the respondents. So we've also got a unique ID number for each of the respondents. We've got the time which they started and then completed the survey, how long it took them, their IP address, and then the actual questions here. So we've got names, age, and then the responses from the Likert scale here, and then the open-ended questions here. So actually there's two people here who have not filled in a name, so we'll just quickly put those in. Okay, and then that file is ready to go. Now, whenever you save it, it asks you if you want to keep saving it in CSV import format. That's quite important to keep it in that format because that's the way that we can bring it into Quirkos. So if you wanted to play with any of the data, remove some of the responses, correct typos and things like that, then you can do that in Excel and then save it, or any other spreadsheet package actually, and then save it as a CSV file. And then when you're ready to bring it into Quirkos, all you need to do here is start a new project. And when you do that, it's important to choose the structured questions option. Now, what that means is that you basically say that you are going to be working on a project that has the same questions for all the respondents. So it's not a semi-structured interview, but it's a structured response where everybody's being asked the same questions. And that allows you to easily compare the same question across different respondees, across the different sources. So we'll select a new project there, and then we'll put in the file name here in CSV example. So we'll just call this CSV example. Great. And so now we've got a new project. There's nothing in here at the moment. This is just the default blank canvas view. But what we can do by clicking on the bottom right button here, the plus button here to add sources, is select import sources from CSV. And then when we do that, it gives us an option to select that file that we had earlier. So this is again in the CSV example, and there it is, the Eserve export file there. Now, when we click on that, it opens up the file and has a look at those column headings that we had along the top. So these are the ones here. So the session ID, start time, end time. And what we've got here are three options for how we want Quirkos to treat each of those column headings. So for example, the session ID here has a guess that that's going to be a property which is unique to each source. And a property is usually a numerical or discrete piece of data, not an open-ended piece of qualitative data. So that's right. But you've also got the option here to turn it into a question. So that would be for open-ended questions, or to ignore it, or to set that as the source title. What that means is that the tab view will display that column title as the name of that source. So you probably want either a name there or maybe the unique ID number, which is what we've got here. So we can change this to any of those options that we want. So for example, I don't actually need that unique ID number. It's just a unique identifier string. It's not very useful to me. So if I select ignore here, that won't be imported into the project. And I'm actually going to do the same for the start time and end time. Actually, I'll keep the start time, but I'm not interested in the end time. So I can ignore that one. And that will get saved as a source property. What else do we have here? Duration. Okay, I'm going to ignore that too. The IP address. Don't need to have that. And now we come to the actual questions of the survey. So we've got what is your name? So that we want as a property because that's a discrete numerical thing. In fact, let's change that to be the source title. So now the name of each person is going to be the identifying name for that source. How old are you? That's going to be a discrete property. What do you think of our service? That'll also be a property because that was a restricted response question. And then we've come to the two open-ended questions we had. How can we improve our service? And any other comments? Now, it's looked at these and guessed that these are going to be questions because they're longer, because they have spaces in them, and question mark in the question title. So it's guessed that these are going to be the qualitative data that we want to treat as question and answer responses. So when we've set up that as we would like it to import it, we just click on the import button here, and there we go. It's brought all of these different sources. We can see in the source browser here in as each of these now rows in the CSV file has been brought in as a separate source. So for example, if we look at Bob here, Bob saying, how can we improve our service? Could be cheaper. Any other comments? I like the colors. So these are the open-ended responses for Bob. He's not really said very much there. Someone said a little bit more. There we go. So Fred said a little bit more there. But then if we go here to the source properties view at the top right, we can see here are discrete properties. So we've got age here, and what do people think of the service? And you'll see here that these are all the different values which people have given, the different ages that people have here, and the different start times, which will all be unique values. So if we close that at the top left here, we can now start doing the actual coding. So for example, we might start putting in a bubble here, which is, I don't know, negative comments. I'm just going to keep this very simple for now. And then maybe we want to code this comment as being negative. Probably the whole thing actually didn't feel good with my time. Not sure what the target audience was. All sounds negative, so we can code it in that way. And we can code across these sources too. So, okay, so Simon is saying something negative here as well. So we'll put that on the negative column. And then we can go through and code all of those open-ended responses in Quirkos using our framework here. So we might have other things like positive, obviously, or it's like quite a lot of people here are talking about target audience. So maybe we'll have something in there for audience as well. And so you would go through and do your coding in exactly the same way as if you were working with other open-ended sources. But the advantage that this system gives you is obviously that you can double click and see here across all of your questions, all your responses from different people, all the different negative things that people were saying. But you might want to do something to explore that a little further. So if we look at the query view, we can then use any of these other properties that we have here, such as when they did it or how old they were, or quite usefully, what did they think of the service? So if people thought it was good, run the query. What are people saying about that? What are the people who are not good saying about it? So here, the not good people are saying, okay, they're saying predominantly negative things. But this is the kind of association that might show you something quite intuitive into your text. So for example, if all the people who rated the service as not good were talking about the catering, then maybe you could then quickly see the correlation between the negative feedback, and that's actually something which is about the catering, or maybe about a particular speaker, or the content of the session, or the audience that it was geared towards. So that's the way which you can explore the data and the connections between it. Here you've got the ability to look through and select the individual questions that you have there. And again, using the source browser here in the tabs, you can go through and see either the open-ended responses or the summary of the closed responses as well. And when you're looking at these source properties, these discrete values from the different responses, you can also look at a overview, a graphical overview of all of those discrete values using the source properties overview, which is on the top right. So if you click on that, you can see that this is not particularly useful. Okay, well, here's something which is quite useful. What did you think of our service? So people here, 50% of them are saying that they thought it was good. Okay, so that's actually a majority of people are saying something quite positive here with the acceptable ones as well. So we can get a quick overview of the discrete and quantitative data here. So for example, we've also got the ages here, but nobody has the same age or start time. Actually, it's two people who started at the same time. But depending on what your values are in the survey, that might be showing you something quite illuminating or something that you might want to explore further. And then, of course, you can always export the file. You can create reports, and you can also do a Word export with all of your coded text across all of the sources. So that might be a way that you can pull out those open-ended questions and explore those further. So here's an example of report and the various different, there's the text that we've coded in there. And also we've got a little bit of a view of how we've done the coding so far. And then, of course, the final option would be to export all of the sources as a Word document to show our coding. So we call this Word here. And there we go. So we've got quite a lot of comments that we didn't go through in code just for this example. We've not done a lot of work in this project, but here we've got the negative and audience comments here as color-coded highlights that's been put into the text. So again, a good way that we can explore and share the open-ended point of those questions further. Now, the other thing that you can do in Quirkos is obviously you might want to start your analysis when you don't have all of your responses back and then add other ones later. So if that was the case, we did show a little bit earlier how here with the results export from Eserve, and this will be true for other packages as well, you can choose which responses. So say we had new responses come in and we only wanted to take the last two or those between a particular date and time, so those in the last week or something like that. Then what we can do is create, by clicking on the download button, a new file which just has the new responses. And then when we have that file, we can use the same process again to bring them into Quirkos. And as long as the format is the same, in other words, that the columns are the same, you'll have the ability to add those new sources as new tabs like this along the bottom, and then explore all of your responses together. So again, you choose the same thing again, import sources from CSV, select your file. So this would just have your new responses in. And again, you go through and set up your how you would like it to treat those column headings in the same way as before, and then it will add those values to the project. Now, the only thing to bear in mind here is that it will also create duplicates if you bring in the same sources again. So obviously you can always remove that. So if we do that again now, what we'd actually do is start creating two versions of Joe and Bob and Fred. Now, if that does happen, it's always possible to remove any of the sources just by clicking on the source browser button here and then the little X button here. It warns you because this is a one operation that you can't use the undo and redo buttons for. Are you sure you want to remove the source? So yes, we do, and then we can remove any duplicate sources that we accidentally put in. But obviously it's easier to use that functionality in Eserve or SurveyMonkey and only bring in the responses that you want to. The other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that you can do a lot more to play with the data before you bring it into Quirkos if you open it in a spreadsheet. So for example, if there were some duplicates in here, or you had a couple of values that when you were looking at them, you could see, okay, that person's not completed the survey, or they've put in ridiculous answers, then you can obviously delete those in Excel as well before you save the CSV file and then bring that into Quirkos. So that's pretty much all that we were going to cover for today. I was going to keep it quick just so we have a nice little video just to show you working with survey data specifically in Quirkos. What we're going to do next week is, next month, sorry, is take you through Eserve step by step. So we'll actually start from scratch and create a new survey, go through the whole process of designing the questionnaire, show some of the different options that you have for using different types of responses. So for example, like at scales, multiple choice, and open-ended questions, and then how you will put those into Quirkos and start your analysis. So if you're interested in doing online surveys, Eserve is a great free tool which is available to anyone to use. It's very professional. It allows you to have your own custom branding. It also allows you to have your own entry and exit pages, for example, but also means that you can definitely export all of your data into a format that Quirkos is happy to play with. So that's what we're going to go over next month. I'm just going to give anyone a minute if they've got any questions to type in the text box here. So if there's anything else you'd like me to cover in the session, just let me know. Okay, great. Well, I think that's everything for today. Thanks very much for coming along. Always do get in touch on the forum, via Skype, via Twitter, or email us or call us if you have any questions, and let us know what you'd like us to cover next month. Thanks very much for dropping by.